right. Welcome back to Perspectives. Today's episode is, I guess, a little ad hoc. We haven't had a lot of time to get together. I've been traveling 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and then we had you traveling for a bit, and then I was sick last week. So it's been quite the time of not being available.
This is long overdue.
It is.
Long overdue. We apologize sincerely.
Yes. But so we decided to change angles just a little bit. I think the couch might be a bit more comfortable for both of us. But we'll play around with some stuff. I have some plans to add things to the wall so they're less boring in the future. But as of today, it's a little bit gray. But that's okay. So today's topic is...
You're looking at me?
Yeah, I don't know what
Go ahead.
How we're gonna frame this correctly. So we were going over a whole bunch of different ideas, specifically economics. I think folks would like economics. We were talking about housing prices. I think we are talking about
men and women in the labor force.
Yeah, there was the labor force conversation, because that's always just interesting. Especially things have radically changed around those topics a lot in the last several years. But I think what we're going to talk about is trying to be reasonably attentive to political neutrality, just because that's my thing. BC, not quite so much. But I think what we're going to target today is a little bit of focus on the shifting political
landscape.
That's a good way of phrasing it. Landscape in the last several years. And when I say last several years, I mean last like 20 years, because there's been a whole bunch of shifts in that time period. We're both moderates, right? You'd consider yourself a moderate?
Very much so.
These days, I would consider myself a small L libertarian, which, non-political affiliated, very... social liberal and fiscal conservative. Not quite taxation is theft, but pretty close.
Yeah, I'm ever so slightly to the right of you, primarily just because of a couple key social topics. But I think what you're alluding to is the fact that the social spectrum, the socio-political spectrum, as it were, has shifted pretty dramatically in our lifetimes.
Absolutely.
We've kind of watched it, not even in our lifetimes, but just within the time span that we've been conscious and paying attention.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say that I was never a political activist by any means, but it has definitely become much more front and center in probably the last 10 years or so. You just like no way to get away from it in a lot of regards.
Yeah, probably starting around that 2008 time frame. The Obama election kind of coinciding with the advent and distribution, the incredible market success of the iPhone, the changes in the collective algorithmic approach to the dispensation of media and information by, I think at the time it was mostly YouTube and Facebook.
Well, let's go back farther than that, right? Is before that it was news. Like you would get a lot of local news.
Sure.
And I remember when Anchorman came out and they were making fun of the news cycle. Like, we can show live news, and that live news will keep everybody interested. And I think that was, it's
the start of it.
It's a parody, but it's an accurate parody, which is.
The 24-hour news cycle is what it's called.
Had not existed prior to a lot of, I would say probably like 2000, 2005 is kind of like when the 24-hour news cycle became constant, right? And then you end up with 2008 when social media kind of just took off, and that was both YouTube and Facebook simultaneously. I had a MySpace before that. I don't know if you had a MySpace, but I think you mentioned it earlier when we were just kind of chatting beforehand, that the thing about MySpace is that it was about you as an individual.
Your expression.
Yeah. I mean, I set up my favorite songs. I set like my background picture, style my page. It was just like a mass personal websites for everybody.
Yeah, it was like a personal ad.
Yeah.
Oh, that was just on the internet all the time, and whatever you wanted to be on there, right? If people wanted to know about you, they went to your.
Yeah, but there wasn't really threads. Like I didn't get like constant bombardment of other people's notifications.
I don't think the algorithm, as we collectively call it today and know it, I don't think that existed.
No, it didn't. Yeah. Yeah.
And the 24-hour news cycle, to be fair, folks, that started in probably the early 80s, but it did not reach the fervor that it had up until the early, I'd say mid 2000s, and sort of coinciding with the Iraq War.
Yeah, I would say early 2000s is kind of when that kind of doubled down, right? I was never,
and that was probably the beginning. Also, that was the first time where polarization, where we kind of like took sides, and it meant that if you supported your side, your team on one subject, you had to like align with them on everything.
See, this is something that I always really want to be very, very careful about. Is I remember going and watching videos of like the 1920s and the 1880s, where you would go to Washington and you would see these videos of what the congressional events used to look like. Mm-hmm. Oh, they were violent. There was like right wings and left wings, and you go back far enough, there was the Whigs, and they were rioting against each other. But the thing is it was all hidden. Like if you had pictures of the era, you'd see how politically violent it was at the place.
Sure, it didn't bleed really into the rest of the country the way it does now.
That's right. The rest of the country was, especially without radio and without news cycles, it was like if you were in the middle of Kansas, you had no idea what was going on.
Yeah. Again, I think that the vitriol and the kind of overinflamed sensitivities, I think, really started during that Bush Jr. era. And then it really kicked off during the Obama, the first Obama administration. And partly, again, not to put it all on Obama at all.
No.
Partly it was just the advent of technology, right? It was it was social, it was media and social media both taking advantage of these new abilities to reach into your life and tell you things all the time. So now it's not 24-hour cycle; it's every second cycle. Every second of your day, you're being bombarded by something.
and I think the other thing is, we used to be very localized, like what's happening in my town, what's happening in my city, what's happening in my community. And at that point, things were getting better. So if you look at the statistics, violence was really high in the 90s, like when we were kids, or at least when I was a kid. Sorry, I guess I'm 6 to 10 years older than you.
6.
Yeah. So in the 90s, it was more violent than ever, and based on statistics. And then all of a sudden it started crashing after the 90s because a lot of things just got better, and they just went down and down and down and down and down. But we kept seeing more and more and more and more violence on TV and radio and news. And people, it's like now today, people think that it's more violent than it has ever been. But if you look at the statistics, man, I was out of my house on my bike, and I knew for a fact that if I went by James Lick High School in the Bay Area, they had multiple stabbings and multiple shootings. My parents didn't even want me to go to that school because of how violent it was. But that nowadays you don't really have a lot of that in. I mean, it still exists for sure, but by the numbers, it's substantially lower.
Well, the decline in the U.S., the sharpest decline that we have seen in modern history was in 91.
Yeah.
So violence peaked between 1960 and 1991. After that, it's been a pretty steep downhill. But what we started to see, and I think the violence you're referring to is more like schoolyard brawls, right? And people punching their neighbors over disagreements about the fence, that kind of violence? Or are you talking about murder?
Dude, even gun violence, like violent crimes went substantially down. Like they peaked in the 90s, and then they started dropping. Yeah,
91 was the peak. Total crime definitely dropped, but I think what we started to see in that Bush Jr. era, and then even more so Obama and forward, is political violence and violence of attitude, violence of words. Not that words are violence.
Words are not violence.
Words
folks.
are not violence. They may hurt your feelings, but they're not violence. But you can use words to incite violence.
Yeah, but see,
and that we've started to see.
Those are different. So, good example is if you go into a theater and you shout, bomb or something or fire, right? Those can cause riots or stampedes of people, and people can get hurt.
Yeah.
And so, when you are purposely scaring people that incite actions that could hurt people, that is illegal. You can't go into a theater and shout fire if there isn't a fire.
I think the violence that I was referring to is more like if we label somebody something enough times, if we say somebody's a fascist or a rapist enough times, we get enough people very angry at that person, there's more likely to be an attempt by somebody somewhere who's unhinged on that person, right? And an attempt at some form or level of violence.
Yeah, I mean, I think when most of us
I think that didn't start until social media really took off.
I think you saw, and I think it existed. I mean, you think about the JFK assassination, right? That stuff happened before. There were unhinged people. There has always been unhinged people.
Oh, absolutely. There are always the unhinged in society, and that percentage of society may even remain the same. That's not the issue. It's the issue that, or the fact that more and more people are egging that person on.
Well, I think to your point is because there's more and more visibility.
Yeah, you have more reach.
Somebody that even if the numbers of people that could act that way are the same, or even less, the amount of information that could potentially aggravate or trigger somebody has gone substantially up because of access to data and visibility of things, right? Where somebody who didn't know that a particular person in politics, had such vitriol against them. This could be anybody. This could be Romney. A lot of people hated Romney back in the day for whatever reason. Like he had a book of people, and that was considered negative. I don't know, I don't know if you remember that. It was very odd.
I do.
But the point is if let's say less than 1%, so let's say 0.5% of the population had never seen that, they wouldn't respond to it. But if that same 0.5% of the population is now all visible to it, some percentage of them would be triggered and act on it.
It's not just that a higher percentage are now privy to whatever XYZ information or data point. It's the fact that because of algorithms, now that data can be driven at you and slapping you in the face and the forehead over and over and over and over and over. And while most people are stable enough to either ignore it or move on,
once or twice,
some people have kind of a more unhinged nature, right? A proclivity to.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more.
Become a little fractured, and if they're getting stabbed, so to speak, with a particular idea about a particular person, if somebody is portrayed as Hitler to you, and you think this person is literally the worst human being on the planet in generations, the unhinged folks might, be more likely, more apt to work up the courage to do something about it.
For sure.
And not that they think they're doing anything wrong. It's they think they're being the hero. They're
right.
If that guy's Hitler, it would be the moral obligation to take out Hitler.
Well, that's like the old story, right? The old story is there's a thought experiment that if I could go back in time and I could murder Hitler and prevent all the horrible things that had ever happened, would I be morally correct to go back and kill Hitler?
I think most people would say yes.
But yeah. I mean, I think most people would say yes, which is why you would end up with unhinged people doing unhinged things. However,
I think the difference there is that sorry, I just cut you off. The unhinged person is likely to think that about someone who isn't Hitler.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
A moral person, a good, upstanding person, would not be unhinged to think that guy's Hitler. I need to go take him out in World War II. But that same person, that person with reason and logic, is not so apt today to look at somebody and go, that guy's also Hitler.
Have you ever seen the Marvel Universe What If? It's a TV show on Disney.
I think I saw an episode.
Yeah, so the concept is, what if a certain set of experiences happen and the universe was different. So, you have Thanos who snaps his finger and wants to murder half the universe, right? But what if you went back? What if you went back and Thanos wasn't Thanos and somebody convinced Thanos that was a bad idea and Thanos was actually a good guy on the good team helping the universe? There's an episode in What If like that. So, the idea of going back and killing Hitler as a baby.
Yeah.
Hitler had not made the decision yet to become Hitler when Hitler was a baby. And if you go back in time, the butterfly effect says, or multiple paradoxes, is just by you going back, Hitler may not have actually become Hitler. So the thought experiment is if I go back in time and I kill Hitler as a baby,
am I the bad guy?
I'm the villain for killing a baby who was innocent before they ever did something horrible. Sure. Now, if I go to the point where Hitler is starting the National Party and he's actually driving the very bad behavior and I kill that version of Hitler when he's like in his 20s or whatever.
Probably more acceptable.
More acceptable, exactly.
But a rational person, my point is that they can tell the difference. An unhinged person cannot necessarily.
See, I don't know about that. I feel like politics recently have been so extreme. I'll just give you an example. So Trump, and I'm not trying to be super political, but using an example.
He's an easy one.
Yeah, he is. Right? Is when he was first running? When was that? That was 2015. When he was first running, everyone likes he's a fascist. Now the intellectual in me is like, I know the definition of a fascist. If you open up Trump is a lot of things. He's a demagogue. He's a classist. He cares about rich people more than he cares about poor people in general. Just because that's the world that he's in most of the time. I'm not saying that he doesn't like poor people. I'm just seeing that he kind of tends to lean towards his tribe, and his tribe is typically more capable, more well-off individuals, just because tribalism is a real thing. But I do know that he's not a fascist. He's never been a fascist. I know the definition of a fascist. And so I was taught...
You know what fascists do.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to pull up the dictionary definition of a fascism, because I just want to be very clear in what we're saying. Because a lot of people who might be listening to this are like, oh, he's totally a fascist. Let's get the dictionary definition of fascist.
Well, it's characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, and the forcible suppression of opposition. It prioritizes the nation and often a specific race above individual rights, imposing strict social and economic regimentation. Yeah, there's often characterized as a far right form of authoritarianism.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's some things that have parallels with a lot of different presidents in history. However, they have to be all of those things to be.
Yeah, and I don't think any of our leaders really, in the grand scheme of world leaders in the last 100 years, I don't think any of our presidents really have come close to that.
That's right. None of them.
Standard.
None of them. But that being said, I had a friend who vehemently decided to no longer be my friend because I was unwilling to call him a fascist.
Oh.
Now he came around a number of years later, and we're still friends. But because of the political charged nature of the environment at the time in 2015, people would stop being your friend just because you didn't call somebody a certain.
I remember
definition.
The election night, the night that he won. Within an hour of that happening, I had just gotten home from a work trip, literally minutes before. I go inside, and my wife at the time, I think she had some people over, and they were watching the television, and tons of hubbub, uproar. I think half of her friends were like, it was basically split halfway down the middle.
Half of them were excited, and half of them were
super pissed, and half were like, it was. You would have thought it was like the second coming of Christ. But what happened that night? Wow. That night is that every single, and we lived in a very nice neighborhood in Southern California, and very nice. Every single vehicle in our neighborhood that was not overtly pro DNC or pro Clinton, every single one of them, vehicles that had military stickers, Orange County firefighters, anime stickers, anything that, again, was not like obviously pro Hillary, every one of those vehicles got vandalized in our neighborhood.
I don't think you can say everyone.
We went down the street and we counted them the next morning. Everyone that was still there. It was something like 150 vehicles had their windows smashed in.
Wow.
And things stolen out of them. And that was kind of it was a weird, strange wake-up call. And no, I'm not blaming that on the left broadly or Democrats or progressives or anybody of that ilk. But it was somebody on that side, probably, who was unhinged. It could have even been someone on the right, maybe. I don't know. But it was definitely an unhinged person. And that was the first time that I had seen the difference between political rhetoric, right? People arguing with their friends, pundits on TV, going at it back and forth. That was the first time that I saw a physical, tangible expression of political vitriol in America specifically, on that kind of scale. And that was clearly, whether left or right, whoever it was very unhinged. It was probably a group, let's be honest. That's unhinged behavior. And that's a person or persons who don't have the ability to look at the normal world. They don't have the ability to look at the world in front of them and come to what the rest of us would consider a rational decision.
Yeah,
I think those are the people that I'm talking about being susceptible to all of this influence, political influence, and being more apt or more likely to make a crazy move on somebody, left or right.
Yeah, I think at that time period is just I saw a lot more, I would say, abnormal behavior from large groups across the board.
Yeah.
Right.
The riots that started.
The riots were crazy, and there was like even right wing groups kind of got like super like overtly more verbal, which was very disturbing to me,
and aggressively so.
Yeah.
When did Proud? That made me think of Proud Boys. When did Proud Boys?
Proud Boys was super disturbing. Like I don't even like that whole rhetoric thing. You know, I think is toxic on either side, right? I think anytime that we revert to tribalism, you know, I remember back in the late 80s when I was listening to the various presidents at the time, it was always about America, right? It was always like America does hard things because it is hard. And America does the important things because it's the right thing to do. And, you know, we're supporting our American troops and we're supporting our national beliefs, and we are trying to, you know, change the world to be positive because we understand that democracy has had a positive influence historically, both in America and in all the places that adopted it. And then all of a sudden, to your point, now we're kind of shifting away from America for Americans. Like I remember the 4th of July when I was a kid, regardless, because I was in the Bay Area, right? The 4th of July was a big deal to everybody. It was just an American thing to go do. And now all of a sudden you have people in America who are very, very anti-American, right? And it's like, it's our party, it's your party. I think the Proud Boys is just an example of that. Like I don't consider the Proud Boys American because they're not, like they have their own tribe. I think the global, my opinion is the second we step out of our tribes and we start looking more at ourselves as a species, like the human thing to do for everybody, the better that we will become. But we are seeing a reversion of that based on social media and isolationism and tribalism. It's kind of like this huge comeback thing.
Yeah, in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't which group is evil and which wasn't. It was like, America's awesome. We disagree on how to implement the proper tax strategy, or we disagree on how to approach a certain right now they'll remain unnamed, but some political entity that's foreign to us, right? A foreign group. We disagree about how we characterize what it means to be responsible stewards of taxes and things like that, right? From Walter Mondale and Ralph Nader, well, maybe not Ralph, Walter Mondale and Ross Perot, to Bush Senior, Reagan. Who else can I remember from that era?
Yeah, look,
it was about ideas and selling that idea to the American public. Now it's about how evil this person across from me is.
That's right.
And how hard we should work to destroy them. It's a very strange shift because
political ads are very negative these days.
And I don't think most of America, I don't think the majority of Americans, left or right or center, think that way. No. Generally speaking, I think most of us view politics and politicians with a little less trust now. I think you could say that there's more distrust, but we look at politicians like a kind of a skeezier, scummier version of ourselves, of our neighbors.
I mean, the current ratings of people's trust in American Congress and everything else is like the lowest they've ever been. Both Trump's and Biden's approval ratings were pretty darn low across the board. Mm-hmm. I think there's just not a lot of trust in government in general. And I agree with you. I think back in the day, and this is not trying to look at the past with rose-colored glasses. I think the world goes through cycles. I think there's a grand pendulum that swings too far left or swings too far right. And in general, we're kind of right in the middle where we should be because
it typically seems to self-correct.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's partly due to the nature of what America is, and partly due to the very clever political system that was instituted by our founding fathers and the guardrails put on it. But I think what we're seeing now are people that are willing to push the boundaries of that system as absolutely hard and far as possible.
And that's on both sides.
It's like taking a balloon, a water balloon, and the package says this is a, 500 cc balloon, and you just for generations have inflated it to 500 cc's because that's what you do. And now we're kind of going like, I wonder if it'll take 1100.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Oh, it took 1100. Let's go 1150. Just for almost just to see what happens. And it seems on some level like somebody is influencing things who just wants to see it all burn.
Well, I think that's the difficulty, right? Is a lot of people feel that if the system's bad, we should just burn it all down. The problem is it's one of the best systems that we've seen.
One of?
Yeah, the most successful system in all of human history.
For all of its flaws. It does have flaws.
Totally has flaws. But
it is a terrible system except for all the others.
Yeah, all the other systems are far, far worse. But the point that I want to make, and this is kind of an important point, is that I think most Americans can agree on what we're trying to do. So let me give you an example of that. We all feel that we want to take care of the underprivileged, right? The downtrodden in society. If someone has medical problems, we want to take care of those individuals. We all feel like there's not enough housing. Like we want to make sure that the people that can't afford housing can't afford housing. We all agree that we don't want people without healthcare to go without healthcare. Like we all agree on some of the fundamental level that there are disagreements for sure, but I think the majority of us agree that there's a good portion of things that we think make sense. The problem is how we solve that problem, right? So when you think about the homeless problem, one side of the aisle is, well, we just give them a universal basic income and we just pay for everything that they want. And then the and the other side of the aisle is like, well, then they won't be successful on their own because it's not, you give a man a fish.
There's no incentive.
There's no incentive. And so the other side's like, no. You create work incentives so that they can build businesses and get out of struggles. But not everybody is capable of doing those things.
Especially in today's economy.
There's a lot of reasons for it. But, I don't think one side has the right answer. I think it's always like a combination of things, and it's like a huge gray scale.
No, and what's amazing about the system that our founding fathers gave us is that those problems were meant to be solved at a local level. They were meant to be solved firstly at a local level, and then secondarily at a state level, and then tertiarily or thirdly on a national level. They're supposed to be unique to the situation. The people closest to the problem are going to be the ones most apt to accurately address it, right? Because they have the best eyes on, they have the best idea and picture of what's going on. Their intelligence is fresh and timely, and it's right there. They're connected to it, right? People who in Washington, D.C., people in Washington are not in your neighborhood, right? They're not even in your state for the most part, and the ones that are those representatives, they can't be everywhere in that state. Especially big places like Florida, Texas, Colorado, I guess, California, really. Like, there's no way a representative from your state knows what it's like for everybody in that state. Well, so the problems the social problems were supposed to be addressed on the local level first, not from a national perspective, because it's super hard to govern from that far up, and it's super hard to come up with any kind of policy in any area of life that works for everybody when you're that far removed from the problem.
I mean, I agree. I think that there's a big misunderstanding of how our systems are supposed to work, and people get way too upset over who's sitting in Washington versus who's sitting local. I think local is far more important. And
it really is.
When you look at the split of laws, by the way, most of the laws don't come from the federal level. Almost most of your laws, well over 50%, all come from your local municipality. We kind of agree that there are laws across the board that we think make the most sense, like speeding laws, traffic laws. One county feels that it's good, so the other county agrees with it, and then it becomes a part of the state laws. And then at some point, everybody in the country kind of agrees with some of those basic laws, and some of those laws end up at the country level because we understand that, like, seatbelt laws make sense kind of like everybody across the board. But the mass majority of the laws are local, and I think it boggles
they should stay that way.
100%. And I think it boggles my mind when people get so upset about who's in Washington, because Washington laws do not affect your state as much as you think. I'll give good example. Abortion laws it is very, very different state by state by state by state.
As it should be.
Even before Roe v. Wade was dismissed or countered by the Supreme Court, there was still a lot of variance between every single state on what the interpretation of those laws meant before that happened. And you want that. And from my perspective, somebody living in Texas does not know about the problems in Nevada.
Exactly.
Just like the people that have problems in Nevada do not understand the problems in Florida or New York or California. And New York City is just a perfect example, because New York City is as far as you could possibly get from Carson City, Nevada, right? And
New York City is not even indicative or representative of the rest of New York.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk to anyone else in the rest of New York, and they're like, no, that is not us.
Yeah, but to my point is, that's why the laws in New York need to be for New York, and the laws in Carson City need to be for Carson City, because there's a lot of different problems.
We keep trying to address problems out of knee-jerk reaction. We keep trying to get our legislators to address, and our presidents, to address problems at a federal level. It's kind of like using a jackhammer to put a hole in your wall to hang a picture. Like, if you're trying to hang a wall anchor, don't use a jackhammer. Use something a little more precise.
I think there are laws that
a little less forceful.
I think there are laws that make sense at the federal level.
Sure, and those typically have to do with a federal purview. And without going into a dissertation on federalism, the federal government initially was really intended to have a certain purview or a certain range of responsibilities, and the rest was left up to the states, the majority of it. And those things were defense of the common good, defense of the nation, right? Regulating interstate commerce, the postal system. It was a very, relatively speaking, a very small, short list of priorities that those early politicians said, hey, this is the job of the federal government, because they broadly apply the same way to everybody's circumstances. But all of these other nuanced situations, those really need to be handled by the people involved in them, the people affected by them. And I think we've lost track of that in today's day and age. And I'm not sure how much of that can be blamed on social media or media in general. But I think some of it can be. I think some of it, because national issues have become pushed into your face to the point where it feels personal.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the other thing you got to be really careful of is social media definitely incites tribalism. And what I mean by that is, let's say we look at an event. Let's say we look at some violent crime, right? If we all saw that on the evening news, like the 6 o'clock news, you would see it, I would see it. You go back to the late 80s, we'd all watch that news cycle. We all saw the same news, and so we would all mostly react very similarly to that same news, right? We would find it abhorrent. That's a violent crime. We think that it should be, dealt with in a certain way, and society kind of responds in tune. What you have now with social media is not just echo chambers, but very specific viewpoints. And so somebody will watch it on Fox News, and I'm not looking negatively on any of these social media. I don't view them, or these media outlets, I don't view them as media or news anymore. I view them as entertainment shows. They're very catered to their base. So let's say you have MSNBC and Fox News, or what's the other one?
It's MS Now.
Oh, MS Now. So out of it. So you have MS Now,
CNN,
and CNN,
ABC, NBC.
But let's just say whichever one's on the left side, one's on the right side. So they all look at an event, this violent event that happens, right? Let's say a shooting at a school or something. You go to one media outlet, and they're very like, oh my gosh, this is the most horrible thing, and we all really care about the parents and the families and blah 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 blah. And then you go to the other side, and they're just like, they have a very different slant on the whole situation. So now you have half the population that is viewing this event in one way, and half the population that's viewing the event in a completely different way, and they're reacting differently. And you and I don't get along, because how could you not see that horrible event that I saw the way I saw it and react the same way that I saw it?
I think to add to that, because I think that started in the Bush Jr. era. Sure. I think what we're seeing now, more so than that, is individual influencers giving their opinion, and they're charismatic. We like them. So them harping on something over and over and over from their perspective, their point of view, which may or may not be their own. It could be influenced by interests, right?
I don't know what
monetization, or not. But those people are the voices now that in our ear, and we can listen to them ad nauseum and to the exclusion of everything else.
Yeah.
I'm fairly well known amongst some of my friends for bombarding them with a certain particular political pundit, because I know everybody hates him, and he makes really good logical points at certain times, and sometimes I disagree with him. But he's very different than...
Yeah, which one is that?
You wish. He's very different than the rest of the guys on his own network, and most pundits nowadays. But people think, and I get this comment a lot, like, oh man, you need to stop, you got to get off of that guy's train, you got to stop listening to so-and-so. And I'm like, well, he's only like 9% of my daily intake. I'm listening to politics and current events continually all the time, right? I'm ingesting that, I'm chewing it up, I'm mentally Venn diagramming it. Because I'm not naturally savant with politics. I'm not naturally gifted at it, so I need to pay extra attention. And unfortunately, as dirty of a subject as it is, and much as I hate it, it's critical because it impacts all of our lives. That's my personal take on it. But going back to the point, there is this stigma that I only listen to this one guy.
Yeah, but I think some people only do listen to that one guy.
And most people actually do that.
Yeah,
They just listen to the people that they like.
I have family members, and I'm not going to name specific family members that watch very specific sides of the political spectrum, and I watch both. I'll watch if any big event happens, I'll watch it on Fox. I'll watch it on MS Now. MS Now. I'll
watch so much MS Now.
I'll watch it on YouTube.
CNN.
CNN.
Yeah.
I look at 3, 4, 5, 6 different variants of it. And, I'm so used to walking across to different variants that this side has an interesting take. That side has an interesting take. This side has an interesting take. And then I kind of like stitch it together because I know that there's political bias. And I'm just like,
yeah, I'm not looking for their take at all, believe it or not. I don't care about the take, and everyone is going to have one. I'm looking for the details.
Yes.
I'm looking for the details and all of the noise. I'm looking for the actual information so I can come up with my own take. Because there's no way for me to create an informed opinion of my own, which I seek to do, if all I'm doing is ingesting someone's take.
Yeah, but my point is when people are only ingesting one side of the story, then they're a part of their tribe and their viewpoints get skewed. And when other people disagree with them, those people are now my enemy rather than just somebody that is viewing it from a different angle.
Yeah.
And
it
that's
now
a
becomes
problem.
us versus them.
That's right.
Yeah. Rather than us versus the problem. Us being America. It should be all of us versus this problem that we need to solve. Instead, it's become me versus you and F you.
Yeah, which is very toxic, right? Yeah. It's not healthy for us or anybody else to kind of feel that way. So I think we'll wrap this up in a little bit, which I think is the challenge for us is to step away from social media and to recognize that it is an algorithm that is trying to keep you paying attention much more intently than historical news media.
Yeah, there's money in keeping your attention, right? I'm feeding that algorithm in a way, although my algorithm tends to be very confusing because, again, I pay attention to all sides. So my algorithm is very confused and very confusing. Most people that I know, their algorithm is decidedly one-sided in some direction, and very focalized. And I think that's something that we should aim to reduce in our lives. I think variety is the spice of life, and particularly when it comes to the information you're taking in. By no means am I saying you must believe one side or the other.
Yeah.
And by no means am I saying that one is inherently better or worse than the other. What I am saying is that we need to be extra aware in this day and age of how easy it is for others to influence us and what we think and believe. And then we need to be careful that what we think and believe does not cross the line of opinion into something horrific and tangible. Right?
Yeah, I think the other thing to point out is you should seek to understand the other side. You should
absolutely.
You should seek to. I think your point of I watch everything, right? Is I am trying to listen to what everybody's perspective is, what everybody's vantage point is, because a different vantage point has different details.
Two things about that. The attempt is to get a better, true picture of the actual event and the thing that happened.
Exactly.
Right? But in addition, it also, the more you understand these other viewpoints, the more you actually have in common with other people.
Yeah.
Who may, on the face of it, seem like they're your enemy. They may seem like they directly oppose you. I think most of us have more in common with each other than we don't. And we have forgotten that. And that was a big part of the American experiment for many generations that we've kind of lost track of. We've become so tribal that we're now going in the opposite direction of e pluribus unum.
See, it's we'll wrap this up, but I think that's one of the things that I really try is because I'm a moderate. I always end up in situations where either they're one side or the other side. And I always have to start the conversation with all the things that I agree with them on, so that we set a political baseline, or we set a ideological baseline that we agree on all these things. And then we start the conversations of the things that we disagree with.
That puts you on a human baseline.
That's right.
Hey, let's remember we're both human. We're all humans. That means we're mostly the same.
Yes, agreed.
We're mostly the same.
Well, I think that was an interesting conversation today. Maybe more of that later.
We'll see.
Okay. And with that, everybody, thank you so much for another episode of perspectives.
We'll see you next time.